You're intelligent, capable, and ambitious, yet find yourself chronically delaying important tasks, despite knowing better, creating frustrating gap between what you know you should do and what you actually do. Recognizing that procrastination among smart people is not laziness or lack of intelligence, but complex psychological pattern involving perfectionism, fear, and emotional regulation failures. Knowing that intelligence often intensifies procrastination because smart people overthink, overanalyze, and create elaborate rationalizations for delay while anticipating all potential problems, creating paralysis. Understanding that procrastination creates vicious cycle where delay generates guilt and anxiety, which trigger more avoidance, perpetuating pattern that becomes increasingly difficult to break, and losing years or decades to chronic procrastination, watching potential remain unrealized as intelligence and capability never translate into actual achievement, because psychological barriers prevent consistent action, making procrastination cycle breaking absolutely essential for transforming capability into accomplishment. This procrastination trap is systematically undermining your life by creating perpetual gap between potential and achievement, where intelligence remains theoretical, not practical, causing chronic stress, guilt, and shame from knowing you should be doing more, eroding self-esteem and well-being, preventing meaningful progress on important goals as constant delay ensures projects remain incomplete and ambitions unrealized, damaging relationships and professional reputation through missed deadlines, broken commitments, and unreliability, and ensuring decades pass in frustrated underachievement where you accomplish fraction of what capability would enable, making procrastination cycle breaking critical priority. Breaking procrastination cycle is not about more willpower or time management, but about understanding and addressing psychological roots creating delay, not about forcing yourself through techniques alone, but resolving underlying fears, perfectionism, and emotional patterns driving avoidance, and not mysterious curse but predictable pattern with identifiable causes. This audiobook teaches why smart people procrastinate and how to break cycle through 10 comprehensive frameworks, including understanding intelligence, procrastination paradox, and unique factors, recognizing perfectionism as primary driver, creating impossible standards, addressing fear of failure and success, blocking action, developing emotional regulation, managing discomfort, triggering avoidance, overcoming analysis paralysis and overthinking, preventing starting, building starting rituals that bypass resistance, creating accountability systems, preventing escape, using strategic deadlines and time constraints, developing self-compassion, replacing shame cycles, and integrating all elements into consistent action system, eliminating chronic delay. Stop procrastinating despite intelligence and start translating capability into achievement. Stop delaying and start doing. Master 10 frameworks systematically. Implement deliberately and break the cycle through unwavering commitment, starting now. Chapter 1. Understand the intelligence procrastination paradox and unique factors. Chapter 1 understands intelligence procrastination paradox, exploring why smart people often procrastinate more than others despite, or perhaps because of their cognitive abilities. The paradox understanding shows that research reveals positive correlation between intelligence and procrastination, where highly intelligent individuals frequently struggle more with chronic delay than average population, contradicting assumption that smart people should accomplish more. That intelligence creates unique procrastination vulnerabilities through overthinking, overanalyzing, and anticipating problems that less analytical people never consider. That smart people develop sophisticated rationalization systems, justifying delay with compelling, logical-sounding reasons that mask underlying emotional avoidance. That ability to succeed with minimal effort early in life often prevents smart people from developing discipline and frustration tolerance needed for challenging long-term projects. And understanding that systematically understanding intelligence procrastination paradox through factor identification, overthinking, recognition, and rationalization awareness is essential. First, framework for breaking procrastination cycle, because recognizing how your intelligence contributes to delay enables targeted intervention, making paradox understanding critical foundation, where confusion about why intelligent capable person procrastinates perpetuated shame and continued avoidance. Understand the intelligence procrastination paradox and unique factors. Recognize why smart people delay. Understand paradox or remain confused. The intelligence factors identify specific ways cognitive ability contributes to procrastination, creating unique vulnerabilities. Intelligence-linked factors include overthinking and analysis paralysis, where ability to see multiple perspectives and anticipate numerous outcomes creates decision paralysis preventing action. Perfectionism and impossibly high standards, where intelligence enables envisioning ideal outcomes making actual and perfect reality feel inadequate and not worth attempting. Boredom with routine tasks, where high intelligence finds mundane necessary work unstimulating, leading to avoidance in favor of more engaging activities. Ability to succeed with last-minute effort, where past pattern of cramming and still achieving acceptable results reinforces procrastination through intermittent reinforcement. Sophisticated rationalization, where verbal and analytical skills create convincing justifications for delay, masking emotional avoidance as logical choice. Anticipatory anxiety about all potential problems. Intelligent mind can foresee, creating overwhelming sense of difficulty before even starting. And comfort zone attachment, where early success without struggle creates fear of challenges that might reveal limitations. Recognize how your intelligence specifically contributes to procrastination through honest self-examination. Asking, do I overthink decisions? Seeing so many angles that choosing becomes impossible. Do I set standards so high that nothing I could actually produce seems worth doing? Do I avoid boring tasks that seem beneath my capabilities? Do I rely on ability to perform well under extreme pressure, enabling continued delay? Do I create elaborate logical reasons for not starting that hide emotional discomfort? And do I anticipate so many problems that tasks feel overwhelming before beginning? Understanding your specific intelligence procrastination links creates awareness, enabling targeted intervention. The overthinking recognition reveals analysis paralysis pattern, where excessive thinking prevents action. Overthinking manifests as endless research and preparation without ever starting actual work, considering every possible approach and angle without deciding on one, anticipating all potential problems and trying to solve them before beginning, seeking perfect information or conditions that never arrive, and spending more time thinking about tasks than doing it. Overthinking feels productive because mental activity seems like progress, while actually serving avoidance function, preventing uncomfortable action. Recognize overthinking through noticing when you spend hours researching or planning, but never start. When you know more than enough to begin, but keep seeking more information. When you create elaborate plans that never get executed. And when thinking about tasks generates more anxiety than actual doing would. Overthinking is intelligence serving avoidance. The rationalization awareness notices elaborate justifications smart people create for procrastination. Rationalizations include, I work better under pressure, so I should wait until deadline, creates urgency when actually this masks discomfort avoidance. I need perfect conditions or more information before starting when actually you need to start imperfectly. This task is not important enough to do now when actually it matters but feels uncomfortable. I am too busy with other things when actually you create busyness avoiding priority task. And I need to be in right mood or have inspiration when actually action creates motivation, not vice versa. Smart people excel at creating compelling rationalizations that sound logical, making it difficult to recognize them as avoidance. Develop rationalization awareness through questioning whether logical sounding reasons might actually be emotional avoidance, asking if excuse would apply to something you wanted to do, and recognizing patterns where same justifications appear repeatedly across different tasks, suggesting systematic avoidance, not legitimate reasons. The early success pattern understands how achievement without effort creates procrastination. Many intelligent people succeeded in school and early career with minimal sustained effort through quick comprehension and last-minute performance, creating pattern where serious sustained work was never necessary. This pattern teaches that effort is not required for success, making it difficult to engage disciplined work when challenges increase and natural ability alone proves insufficient. Recognize whether you avoided developing work habits and frustration tolerance because success came easily without them. The boredom factor acknowledges that intelligent minds find routine necessary tasks unstimulating, leading to avoidance. Necessary work often involves mundane execution, not exciting problem solving, causing intelligent people to procrastinate on implementation while enjoying planning and strategizing. Accept that important work includes boring components requiring discipline, not just interest. The implementation requires understanding how intelligence paradoxically contributes to procrastination, identifying specific ways your cognitive abilities create unique vulnerabilities, recognizing overthinking and analysis paralysis patterns, becoming aware of sophisticated rationalizations masking avoidance, understanding how early success without effort created procrastination patterns, acknowledging boredom with routine tasks, and treating paradox understanding as compassionate foundation, where recognizing intelligence creates specific procrastination factors, enables targeted intervention rather than generic willpower approaches, making understanding essential first framework for smart person procrastination cycle breaking. Understand the intelligence procrastination paradox and unique factors. Recognize why smart people delay. Understand paradox or remain confused. You understand now that intelligence often correlates with procrastination, that overthinking creates analysis paralysis, that smart people develop sophisticated rationalizations, that early success without effort prevents discipline development, and that Chapter 1 provides paradox framework making self-understanding possible where confusion perpetuated shame. Chapter 2. Recognize perfectionism as primary driver creating impossible standards. Chapter 2 recognizes perfectionism as primary psychological driver of procrastination among intelligent people, creating impossible standards that prevent starting or completing work. The perfectionism power shows that perfectionism is not pursuit of excellence, but fear-driven need for flawlessness that paradoxically prevents achievement, because impossibly high standards make any realistic outcome feel inadequate, triggering avoidance. That intelligent people are especially vulnerable to perfectionism because ability to envision ideal outcomes makes actual imperfect reality disappointing before even beginning. That all or nothing thinking inherent in perfectionism creates binary choice between perfect execution or not trying at all, eliminating middle ground of good enough. That perfectionism masquerades as high standards or conscientiousness, but actually stems from fear of judgment failure or inadequacy, using impossible standards as protection against criticism. And understanding that systematically recognizing perfectionism through standard examination, thinking pattern identification, and acceptance practice is essential second framework for breaking procrastination cycle, because perfectionism is often invisible to perfectionists who view their standards as reasonable, making recognition critical where unexamined perfectionism perpetuated chronic delay through impossible expectations. Recognize perfectionism as primary driver creating impossible standards. Accept good enough reality. Address perfectionism or remain paralyzed. The standard examination identifies unrealistic expectations and impossibly high bars that prevent action or completion. Perfectionist standards include expecting first attempt or draft to be excellent, rather than accepting that quality emerges through revision, requiring complete certainty or perfect plan before starting when actually clarity comes through doing, demanding that work meet professional or expert level immediately despite being beginner or learning, insisting on perfect conditions, time or mood before beginning when actually these rarely align, and expecting to avoid all mistakes or produce flawless results when actually errors are inevitable part of process. Examine standards through asking, would I hold others to this same standard, or am I uniquely harsh with myself? Is this standard realistic given my experience, resources, and time frame? Does this expectation allow for learning process and improvement over time? Am I demanding perfection that even experts in field do not achieve? And is my standard preventing any action rather than ensuring quality action? Write down your actual expectations for task, then ask objective observer whether they seem reasonable, revealing gap between perfectionist standards and reality. Perfectionist standards feel normal to perfectionists, requiring external perspective to recognize their impossibility. The thinking pattern reveals all or nothing binary mindset that eliminates middle ground between perfection and failure. All or nothing thinking appears as if I cannot do this perfectly, I should not do it at all, viewing any imperfection as complete failure, categorizing outcomes as either total success or worthless, believing partial progress or good enough execution has no value, and quitting or not starting when perfect execution seems impossible. Binary thinking creates false choice where only options are flawless performance or avoidance, when actually spectrum exists between these extremes where good work, adequate completion, and incremental progress all have value. Recognize all or nothing thinking through noticing absolute language in self-talk like always, never, must, and should, observing tendency to abandon work when it cannot be perfect, and catching perfectionist thoughts that eliminate middle options. Challenge binary thinking by deliberately identifying middle ground, asking what would adequate look like? What would good enough mean here? What value exists in imperfect completion? And what partial progress could I make? Practice actively choosing good enough rather than perfect or nothing, expanding tolerance for imperfection. The acceptance practice embraces imperfection as necessary, inevitable part of any worthwhile endeavor rather than shameful failing to avoid. Acceptance means recognizing that all valuable work involves imperfection, that first attempts are supposed to be rough, requiring revision, that mistakes and errors are how learning happens, not evidence of inadequacy, that perfect is enemy of done, where insistence on flawlessness prevents completion, and that imperfect action produces more results than perfect inaction. Practice acceptance through deliberately doing imperfect work as exercise, tolerating discomfort of not meeting impossible standards, completing tasks to adequate standard rather than perfect standard, submitting or sharing imperfect work, getting real feedback rather than imagined criticism, celebrating completion regardless of quality level, and reminding yourself that imperfect finished work has more value than perfect work that never gets done. Acceptance is not lowering standards, but recognizing that perfectionism prevents achieving any standard through blocking action. The fear recognition understands perfectionism stems from fear, not dedication to quality. Underlying fears include fear of judgment, where perfect work cannot be criticized, fear of revealing inadequacy, where if work is not attempted, limitations remain unproven, fear of disappointing others or self, where impossible standards protect against disappointment by preventing trying, and fear of success, where remaining stuck through perfectionism avoids visibility and responsibility. Address fears directly rather than maintaining perfectionism as protection. The progress over perfection mindset values forward movement and iterative improvement over flawless execution. Adopt mindset through focusing on whether taking action, not whether action is perfect. Celebrating any progress, however small, rather than only recognizing achievement of impossible standards. Viewing work as iterative process where version 1 leads to improved version 2. And asking what is next achievable step rather than how to do everything perfectly. The self-compassion application treats yourself kindly when imperfection emerges rather than harsh criticism that reinforces perfectionism. Compassion recognizes that imperfection is human, not personal failing, that mistakes are valuable learning, not shameful errors, and that kindness enables continued action while criticism triggers avoidance. The good enough practice deliberately produces adequate work rather than excellent work as exercise in releasing perfectionism. Practice through intentionally completing tasks to satisfactory rather than outstanding standard, setting time limits requiring good enough completion, and building tolerance for imperfection through repeated exposure. The implementation requires examining standards, revealing impossible expectations, identifying all or nothing thinking patterns, practicing acceptance of inevitable imperfection, recognizing fear driving perfectionism, adopting progress over perfection mindset, applying self-compassion around imperfection, deliberately practicing good enough work, and treating perfectionism recognition as critical where unexamined impossible standards prevented action, making acceptance of imperfection essential. Second framework for breaking smart person procrastination cycle. Recognize perfectionism as primary driver creating impossible standards. Accept good enough reality. Address perfectionism or remain paralyzed. You understand now that perfectionism prevents achievement through impossible standards, that all or nothing thinking eliminates middle ground, that acceptance of imperfection enables action, that fear drives perfectionism, and that Chapter 2 provides perfectionism framework, making imperfection acceptance possible where perfectionism perpetuated paralysis. Chapter 3 address fear of failure and success blocking action. Chapter 3 addresses fear of failure and success as fundamental emotional blocks that prevent intelligent people from taking action despite capability and desire. The fear power shows that fear of failure creates procrastination through making avoidance feel safer than attempting, where not trying protects ego from proof of inadequacy while trying risks definitive failure. That fear of success paradoxically blocks action through anxiety about visibility, responsibility, expectations, and life changes that achievement would bring. That both fears operate largely unconsciously, where people experience procrastination without recognizing underlying terror. Driving avoidance. That intelligent people are especially vulnerable to these fears because high expectations from self and others create pressure, making failure feel catastrophic while success feels threatening. And understanding that systematically addressing fears through exploration, recognition, and courage building is essential. Third framework for breaking procrastination cycle. because unaddressed fears create powerful unconscious resistance to action, making fear resolution critical, where avoiding confronting fears perpetuated chronic delay through emotional barriers. Address fear of failure and success, blocking action. Build courage, act despite fear. Resolve fears or remain blocked. The failure fear exploration identifies specific anxieties about inadequacy and negative outcomes that make procrastination feel protective. Fear of failure manifests as terror that trying and failing would prove you are not as capable as you or others believe, revealing inadequacy. Anxiety that failure would confirm deepest fears about yourself, showing you are fundamentally not good enough. Worry that others would judge, criticize, or lose respect for you if you fail, making failure socially dangerous. Fear that one failure means you cannot succeed, creating all or nothing stakes. And dread that failing at important goal would be devastating, making not trying feel safer than risking crushing disappointment. Explore failure fears through asking, what specifically am I afraid would happen if I tried and failed? What would failure mean about me? How would others react, or what would they think? What is worst case scenario I am avoiding? And what makes this feel so threatening that procrastination seems preferable? Write detailed description of feared failure scenario, making unconscious fears explicit. Often articulating specific fears reveals they are exaggerated or manageable, reducing their power. Failure fear keeps you stuck because procrastination protects ego, allowing you to maintain belief that you could succeed if you really tried, while actual attempt would provide definitive answer. The success fear recognition reveals resistance to positive outcomes and achievement that paradoxically triggers procrastination. Fear of success includes anxiety about increased visibility, attention, and scrutiny that achievement brings, making obscurity feel comfortable while success feels exposing. Worry about higher expectations and pressure following success, where achieving one goal creates pressure to maintain or exceed that level. Fear of outshining family or peer group, where success might separate you from important relationships or violate unconscious loyalty to origins. Dread of increased responsibility and demands that success creates, where current life feels manageable while successful life seems overwhelming. And concern that achieving goal would require becoming different person, where change itself feels threatening. Success fear manifests as self-sabotage right at threshold of achievement through suddenly losing motivation, creating problems, or engaging destructive behaviors. Recognize success fear through noticing whether you sabotage yourself when approaching goals, whether you feel anxious or uncomfortable when imagining success, whether you have unconscious beliefs that success would cost you something important like relationships, authenticity, or peace, and whether you associate success with negative qualities like arrogance, superficiality, or selling out. Success fear is subtle because consciously you want achievement while unconsciously you fear its consequences. The courage building develops capacity to act despite fear rather than waiting for fear to disappear before acting. Courage is not absence of fear, but taking action while fear is present. Build courage through recognizing that fear is normal response to uncertainty and risk, not sign you should not act. Understanding that waiting for fear to disappear means never acting because fear precedes growth. Reframing fear as excitement or indication you care about outcome rather than danger signal. Taking small actions despite fear, building confidence through successful experiences, and remembering past times you acted despite fear and survived or succeeded, proving you can handle discomfort. Courage muscle strengthens through use, where each brave action makes next one slightly easier. The fear exposure gradually faces feared outcomes through small steps, building tolerance. Exposure includes imagining worst-case scenarios in detail, often revealing they are survivable. Taking small low-stakes actions, testing whether feared consequences actually occur, and progressively increasing challenge as comfort with fear grows. The reframing practice changes interpretation of failure and success, reducing threat level. Reframe failure as learning and valuable feedback, not character judgment. Reframe success as growth and contribution, not dangerous exposure. And separate outcomes from identity, recognizing that failure or success is event, not definition of worth. The risk acceptance acknowledges that meaningful goals always involve uncertainty and potential for failure or unwanted change. Accept that anything worth doing involves risk, that you cannot guarantee outcomes, that avoiding risk means avoiding growth, and that discomfort of uncertainty is price of meaningful achievement. The worst-case planning prepares for feared outcomes, reducing anxiety about unknown. Plan specifically for what you would do if failure or success occurred, revealing that you could handle either, reducing catastrophic thinking. The implementation requires exploring specific failure fears, identifying inadequacy anxieties, recognizing success fear and resistance to achievement, building courage to act despite fear, gradually exposing to feared outcomes, reframing interpretations, reducing threat, accepting risk as inevitable, planning for worst cases, and treating fear addressing as removing blocks where unconfronted fears prevented action, making courage development essential. Third framework for breaking smart person. Procrastination through emotional resolution. Address fear of failure and success, blocking action. Build courage, act despite fear. Resolve fears or remain blocked. You understand now that failure fear protects ego while preventing achievement, that success fear creates self-sabotage, that courage means acting despite fear, that exposure builds tolerance, and that Chapter 3 provides fear framework, making courage possible where unaddressed fears blocked action. Chapter 4. Develop emotional regulation, managing discomfort, triggering avoidance. Chapter 4 develops emotional regulation, managing uncomfortable feelings that trigger procrastination as primary escape mechanism from psychological distress. The regulation power shows that procrastination is fundamentally emotion regulation failure, where people delay tasks not because they lack time or ability, but because tasks trigger uncomfortable emotions like anxiety, boredom, frustration, or inadequacy that feel intolerable. That intelligent people often have underdeveloped emotional regulation skills, because cognitive abilities allowed compensating for emotional discomfort through rationalization, distraction, or last-minute performance. That avoidance provides immediate emotional relief, creating reinforcement cycle where procrastination temporarily reduces discomfort, rewarding and perpetuating pattern. That tasks triggering most procrastination are those evoking strongest negative emotions, not necessarily most difficult ones objectively. And understanding that systematically developing emotional regulation through discomfort identification, tolerance building, and regulation practice is essential fourth framework for breaking procrastination cycle, because addressing emotions underlying procrastination removes primary driver of avoidance, making emotional mastery critical, where poor emotion management perpetuated delay through making uncomfortable feelings seem unbearable, requiring escape. Develop emotional regulation, managing discomfort, triggering avoidance. Tolerate feelings, act anyway. Regulate emotions or escape into delay. The discomfort identification recognizes specific uncomfortable feelings that tasks trigger, creating impulse to procrastinate. Task-related discomfort includes anxiety about performance, uncertainty, or potential failure, creating dread about beginning. Boredom with tedious necessary work lacking stimulation or interest. Frustration when task is difficult, confusing, or requires sustained effort. Inadequacy or shame when task exposes limitations or requires asking for help. Overwhelm when task seems too large, complex, or demanding. Vulnerability when task involves exposure, criticism, or judgment. And existential discomfort when task connects to larger questions about identity, purpose, or values. Identify what specific emotion each procrastinated task triggers through asking, when I think about starting this task, what do I feel in my body? What emotion arises when I consider doing this work? What feeling am I trying to avoid by delaying? And what discomfort does this task create? Common pattern is that you procrastinate most on tasks triggering strongest negative emotions, regardless of objective difficulty or importance. Recognizing emotional trigger is first step, because you cannot regulate what you do not recognize. The tolerance building develops capacity to experience uncomfortable feelings without immediately escaping through procrastination or other avoidance. Tolerance means allowing feelings to exist without needing to eliminate them immediately, recognizing that emotions are temporary experiences that peak and then naturally subside if not resisted. Understanding that avoiding discomfort strengthens it while staying with discomfort builds capacity. And accepting that meaningful work always involves some psychological discomfort, making tolerance essential, not optional. Build tolerance through practicing staying with mild to moderate discomfort rather than immediately seeking relief. Using mindfulness to observe emotions without judgment as temporary sensations, reminding yourself that feelings are not emergencies requiring immediate action, and progressively exposing yourself to uncomfortable tasks, building confidence through successful experiences. Tolerance exercise might include starting uncomfortable task and staying with rising anxiety for 5 minutes before reassessing whether it remains unbearable, often finding it becomes manageable. Allowing yourself to feel bored with necessary work rather than seeking constant stimulation, or sitting with frustration during difficult problem rather than immediately giving up. Each instance of staying with discomfort rather than escaping builds tolerance, making future discomfort more manageable. The regulation practice uses specific techniques for managing emotional intensity, preventing overwhelm that triggers procrastination. Regulation strategies include breathing exercises using slow deep breathing to activate parasympathetic nervous system, reducing anxiety. Reappraisal, changing thoughts about situation, reducing emotional reaction. Like viewing challenge as opportunity rather than threat. Self-distancing, observing situation from third-person perspective, creating psychological space from overwhelming emotion. Emotion labeling, putting precise name to feeling, which research shows reduces intensity. Physical movement. Releasing stress through exercise or walking. Breaking tasks into smaller pieces, reducing overwhelm to manageable chunks. And self-compassion, treating yourself kindly during difficulty rather than harsh criticism that intensifies negative emotion. Practice regulation proactively before emotions become overwhelming rather than waiting until crisis. Might use breathing before starting anxiety-provoking task. Reframe boring work as necessary step toward meaningful goal. Or break overwhelming project into single next action. The acceptance practice allows emotions to exist without fighting them, which paradoxically reduces their intensity and power. Acceptance means acknowledging I feel anxious and that is okay, rather than demanding anxiety disappear before acting. Recognizing feelings as information about what matters, not commands to avoid, and understanding that trying to eliminate all discomfort is impossible, making acceptance more effective than constant escape. The decoupling understanding separates feeling from action, recognizing you can feel uncomfortable and still act. Decoupling means understanding that anxiety does not mean danger, that boredom does not mean you should quit, that frustration does not mean task is impossible, and that discomfort does not require avoidance. You can feel and do simultaneously. The delayed gratification develops ability to choose long-term benefit over short-term emotional relief. Procrastination provides immediate relief from discomfort while creating long-term stress, guilt, and consequences. Practice choosing temporary discomfort for long-term gain. The self-soothing provides healthy comfort during emotional difficulty rather than using procrastination as sole coping mechanism. Soothing includes compassionate self-talk, brief breaks or rewards after effort, reaching out for support, or engaging calming activities as complement to work, not replacement. The emotional awareness builds general capacity to notice and name feelings throughout day, creating familiarity with emotional experience. Awareness practice includes regular check-ins, asking what am I feeling right now, keeping emotion journal, and developing precise emotional vocabulary. The implementation requires identifying specific discomfort each task triggers, building tolerance for uncomfortable feelings without immediate escape, practicing regulation techniques, managing intensity, accepting emotions without demanding elimination, decoupling feelings from actions, developing delayed gratification, using healthy self-soothing, building emotional awareness, and treating emotional regulation as preventing procrastination where poor emotion management triggered avoidance. Making regulation essential. Fourth framework for breaking smart person procrastination through addressing emotional drivers, not just behavioral symptoms. Develop emotional regulation, managing discomfort, triggering avoidance. Tolerate feelings, act anyway. Regulate emotions or escape into delay. You understand now that procrastination is emotion regulation failure, that tasks trigger specific uncomfortable feelings, that tolerance enables action despite discomfort, that regulation techniques manage intensity, and that Chapter 4 provides emotional framework, making feeling despite acting possible where poor regulation triggered escape. Chapter 5. Overcome analysis paralysis and overthinking, preventing starting. Chapter 5 overcomes analysis paralysis and overthinking patterns that prevent intelligent people from starting despite extensive preparation and knowledge. The paralysis power shows that overthinking is particularly acute problem for intelligent people whose analytical abilities create endless loops of consideration without conclusion. That analysis feels productive because mental activity seems like progress while actually serving procrastination function by indefinitely postponing action. That pursuing perfect information or complete certainty before starting is impossible standard because sufficient information for beginning is much less than comprehensive knowledge, creating artificial barrier. That imperfect action generates more learning and progress than perfect planning, because real-world feedback reveals what theoretical analysis cannot predict. And understanding that systematically overcoming analysis paralysis through analysis recognition, decisive action, and starting bias is essential fifth framework for breaking procrastination cycle. Because overthinking is invisible procrastination that feels like work making recognition. Critical where endless planning prevented actual doing that creates results. Overcome analysis paralysis and overthinking preventing starting. Take imperfect action now. Start acting or keep analyzing. The analysis recognition identifies excessive planning and research that substitute for action, creating illusion of progress. Analysis paralysis manifests as spending hours or days researching before starting when sufficient information already exists for beginning, creating elaborate detailed plans that never get executed. Seeking more information or perfect conditions as excuse for delay. Considering every possible approach without committing to one. Anticipating all potential problems, trying to solve them theoretically before encountering them, and thinking about tasks far longer than doing it would require. Recognize analysis paralysis through tracking time spent planning versus doing, revealing imbalance. Noticing when you keep seeking information, despite already knowing enough to start. Observing when planning feels safer than action, because it avoids real test of capability. And catching yourself using need for more information as rationalization for delay. Simple test is asking honestly, do I need more information to take first step, or am I avoiding discomfort of beginning? Analysis paralysis is overthinking masquerading as thoroughness. The decision-making practice is choosing and committing despite incomplete information or imperfect options. Decisive action means setting deadline for decision after which you commit regardless of remaining uncertainty. Using good enough decision-making where you choose acceptable option rather than searching endlessly for optimal one. Applying 80-20 rule, recognizing that 20% of possible analysis yields 80% of useful insight, making additional analysis low return on investment, limiting research or planning time, creating artificial constraint, forcing decision, and accepting that decisions can be revised based on learning from action, making initial choice less permanent than it feels. Practice decisive action through making small low-stakes decisions, quickly building decision muscle, choosing based on available information without seeking perfect certainty, and committing to trial period where you test approach rather than trying to determine perfect choice theoretically. Decisiveness is not impulsivity, but recognizing when sufficient information exists for reasonable choice, even if not complete information for perfect choice. The action bias develops orientation toward doing rather than endless planning. Action bias means defaulting to small action when uncertain rather than more analysis, recognizing that clarity comes through doing, not just thinking. Understanding that real-world testing reveals what theoretical analysis cannot predict. Valuing iteration and learning from mistakes over perfect first attempt. And accepting that some questions can only be answered through experience, not contemplation. Build action bias through making rule that after reasonable initial research you start and learn through doing. Using time boxes where after set planning period you must begin regardless. And practicing bias towards smallest possible action, asking what is tiniest step I could take right now rather than what is complete plan. Action bias recognizes that starting imperfectly is better than planning perfectly because action creates feedback loop, enabling real learning and progress, while planning creates only theoretical understanding. The good enough standard accepts adequate rather than optimal choices and approaches. Pursuing optimal solution requires extensive analysis and often produces paralysis, while good enough solution can be implemented immediately and improved through iteration. Practice choosing good enough option and starting rather than searching for perfect option that may not exist. The time boxing limits planning and analysis to specific bounded period after which action must begin. Time boxing might mean allowing 1 hour research before starting, spending maximum 2 days on planning, or setting deadline by which initial action must occur regardless of remaining questions. The iteration mindset views work as successive versions that improve over time rather than single perfect attempt. Iteration recognizes that version 1 will be imperfect but enables learning for version 2, creating progressive improvement through action feedback cycle that planning alone cannot achieve. The starting small focuses on minimal first action rather than comprehensive beginning. Small starting might mean writing single paragraph rather than complete document, making one phone call rather than complete campaign, or spending 15 minutes on task rather than completing entire project. Small actions bypass analysis paralysis through reducing stakes. The learning orientation views action as experiment generating data rather than test proving capability. Experimental mindset reduces pressure, making starting easier because you are learning, not performing, and reframes imperfect results as valuable information, not failure. The implementation requires recognizing when analysis substitutes for action, practicing decisive choice despite uncertainty, developing action bias defaulting to doing, accepting good enough rather than optimal, time boxing planning periods, adopting iteration mindset, starting with minimal actions, viewing work as learning experiment, and treating analysis paralysis overcoming as essential where overthinking prevented starting making action bias critical. Fifth framework for breaking smart person procrastination through doing rather than endless planning. Overcome analysis paralysis and overthinking preventing starting. Take imperfect action now. Start acting or keep analyzing. You understand now that overthinking prevents action while feeling productive, that sufficient information for beginning is less than complete knowledge, that imperfect action beats perfect planning, that decisiveness enables progress, and that Chapter 5 provides action framework making starting possible where analysis paralysis prevented doing. Chapter 6. Build starting rituals that bypass resistance. Chapter 6 builds starting rituals that automatically bypass initial resistance, making beginning easier by reducing activation energy required to start work. The ritual power shows that starting is typically hardest part of any task where initial resistance feels overwhelming, but once momentum begins, work becomes easier, making the key challenge getting past initial barrier. That rituals work by creating automatic triggers and familiar patterns that reduce decision fatigue and psychological friction associated with beginning. That consistent starting ritual trains brain to associate specific cues with work mode, creating automatic transition that bypasses conscious resistance. That rituals can be as simple as single action or short sequence, creating just enough structure to overcome inertia without requiring elaborate setup. And understanding that systematically building starting rituals through design consistency and automatic triggering is essential. Sixth framework for breaking procrastination cycle. Because rituals eliminate need to rely on motivation or willpower for starting, making ritual development critical where high activation energy without structure prevented beginning. Build starting rituals that bypass resistance. Create automatic triggers consistently. Establish rituals or face high barrier. The ritual design creates specific sequence of actions that reliably precede work, creating automatic cue for beginning. Effective starting ritual is brief 5 to 10 minutes maximum, avoiding elaborate setup that becomes obstacle. Consistent using same sequence every time, building strong association. Physically engaging, involving actual actions, not just mental preparation, and personally meaningful, using elements that resonate with you, creating positive association, not arbitrary steps. Design ritual through identifying activity that naturally leads into work, like clearing desk, brewing coffee, or reviewing goals. Choosing time and location cues, like specific chair or room dedicated to focused work. Creating physical transition actions like closing unnecessary computer tabs, putting phone away, changing into work clothes. Using sensory triggers like specific music playlist scent or lighting that signals work time, and incorporating brief motivational element like reviewing why task matters or visualizing completion. Example ritual might be brewing specific tea blend, sitting in designated chair, reviewing top 3 priorities for session, opening relevant documents, and starting timer for focused work period. Ritual becomes automatic trigger where these actions signal brain that work is beginning, reducing resistance to starting. The resistance reduction lowers psychological and physical barriers to beginning, making starting path of least resistance. Reduce resistance through preparing workspace previous evening so everything needed is immediately available, removing setup friction. Breaking task into smallest possible first step, like write single sentence or review one document, requiring minimal commitment to begin. Scheduling specific start time, treating it as non-negotiable appointment. Eliminating competing options during scheduled work time through blocking distracting websites, putting phone in another room, or working in location without alternatives, and creating public commitment, telling someone when you will start, adding accountability. Each reduction of friction makes starting slightly easier, where accumulation of small reductions transforms beginning from overwhelming to manageable. The consistency practice establishes ritual through repetition at same time and place when possible, building strong automatic association. Consistency means using ritual every single time you begin work, not just when motivated. Maintaining same sequence and elements, even when tempted to skip, and protecting ritual time and space from interruptions or competing demands. Consistency transforms deliberate ritual into automatic habit, where cues trigger work mode without conscious decision required. The momentum leverage recognizes that once started, continuing is much easier than beginning, using ritual to overcome initial barrier. After ritual completion, commit to working for minimum period like 5 or 10 minutes, often finding that starting was hardest part and continuing feels natural once momentum exists. The positive association builds pleasurable elements into ritual, creating anticipation rather than dread. Association might include using favorite beverage, special music, or comfortable occasion, making ritual itself enjoyable, not just means to end. Positive associations make ritual something you look forward to rather than another obligation. The environmental cueing places physical reminders of ritual, creating external triggers. Environmental cues include leaving ritual items visible like special mug or notebook, setting up workspace to invite ritual beginning, or using location exclusively for focused work, building strong association. The flexibility balance maintains core ritual elements while adapting to circumstances. Balance includes having minimal version for difficult days, ensuring ritual remains accessible, adapting ritual to different locations or situations, and being rigid about doing some version while flexible about exact execution. The celebration connection acknowledges ritual completion, marking transition into work mode. Celebration might be simple as taking deep breath, saying "now I begin," or mentally noting that ritual is complete and work is starting, creating psychological punctuation. The implementation requires designing brief, personally meaningful starting ritual, reducing all barriers to beginning, practicing ritual consistently, building automaticity, leveraging momentum from starting, creating positive associations, using environmental cueing, maintaining flexibility while preserving core, celebrating completion, marking transition, and treating starting ritual as bypassing resistance, where high activation energy without structure prevented beginning, making ritual establishment essential. 6 Framework for making starting automatic rather than requiring constant willpower. Build starting rituals that bypass resistance. Create automatic triggers consistently. Establish rituals or face high barrier. You understand now that starting is hardest part, requiring specific support, that rituals create automatic triggers, reducing resistance, that consistency builds powerful associations, that momentum makes continuing easier, and that Chapter 6 provides ritual framework making automatic starting possible, where high barriers prevented beginning. Chapter 7. Create accountability systems preventing escape. Chapter 7 creates accountability systems that prevent escape into procrastination through external commitment and social pressure. The accountability power shows that external accountability dramatically increases follow through, because commitment to others feels more binding than private commitment to yourself, which is easily rationalized away. That intelligent people are particularly susceptible to accountability, because social reputation and avoiding judgment motivate action when internal motivation fails. That accountability works by creating costs for procrastination, whether social embarrassment, broken commitment, or tangible consequences, making delay less attractive option. That structured accountability systems provide support, encouragement, and perspective during difficult moments when you might otherwise quit. And understanding that systematically creating accountability through system establishment, commitment making, and support development is essential. 7th Framework for breaking procrastination cycle, because external structures supplement internal discipline, making accountability critical force multiplier, where isolation and privacy enabled continued delay without consequences. Create accountability systems preventing escape. Establish external commitment support. Build accountability or enable avoidance. The system establishment builds structured mechanisms, creating regular external check-ins and commitment. Effective accountability systems include finding accountability partner who share similar goals, meeting weekly or more frequently to report progress and commit to next actions, joining mastermind or goal group, providing peer support, mutual accountability, and shared commitment. Working with coach or mentor, providing expert guidance, regular check-ins, and professional accountability relationship. Using public commitment through social media, blog, or community, making goals and progress visible. Creating social pressure. Participating in programs or courses with deadlines, cohorts, and structured accountability built into design, and creating financial stakes through commitment contracts, bet websites, or paying for programs creating monetary cost for non-completion. Choose accountability structure matching your needs and preferences, recognizing that any external commitment is better than none. System works through scheduling specific times for check-ins, preventing avoidance, requiring explicit progress reports, creating visibility, and making procrastination socially costly through disappointing others or breaking commitments. The commitment making creates specific explicit promises to accountability partners or systems, increasing psychological investment. Effective commitments are specific, stating exactly what you will do, not vague intentions. Time-bound, including clear deadline for completion. Public, shared with others, creating social dimension. And realistic, achievable given your actual capacity and constraints, not aspirational wish. Make commitments through declaring to accountability partner, I will complete X by Y date. Posting public intention on social media or blog. Telling coach or mentor specific action you commit to before next meeting, or formally registering commitment through contract or program. Commitment works by transforming private intention into social promise, where breaking commitment means disappointing others, damaging reputation, or violating stated word, creating much higher psychological cost than merely disappointing yourself. The support development builds relationships, providing encouragement, perspective, and assistance during challenges. Supportive accountability includes celebrating progress and wins, maintaining motivation through recognition, providing encouragement during setbacks, preventing discouragement from derailing effort, offering perspective when overwhelmed, helping distinguish real obstacles from perceived impossibilities, sharing strategies and solutions when stuck, leveraging collective wisdom, and creating sense of shared journey, reducing isolation that enables procrastination. Find support through joining communities of people pursuing similar goals, cultivating relationships with accountability partners beyond just reporting, and being willing to both give and receive support, creating reciprocal beneficial relationships. The regular reporting creates rhythm of disclosure, requiring periodic accounting of actions and progress. Regular reporting might mean weekly email to accountability partner detailing what you accomplished and committing to next week actions. Daily check-in through APP or group, hosting brief progress update. Monthly meeting with coach, reviewing overall trajectory. Or public progress posts, creating ongoing visibility. Reporting works through creating deadline for having something to report, motivating action. Providing opportunity to acknowledge progress, reinforcing positive momentum. And requiring honesty about lack of progress, creating discomfort that motivates change. The consequence establishment creates meaningful stakes for procrastination versus action, making follow-through worthwhile. Consequences include social embarrassment of admitting failure to complete commitments, financial costs through lost deposits, refunded fees or paid penalties, missed opportunities that only come with timely action, and damaged reputation or relationships through pattern of broken promises. While negative consequences motivate, positive consequences like rewards, recognition, or progression also work. The partner selection chooses accountability partners carefully, ensuring productive rather than enabling relationships. Good accountability partners are reliable, consistent in their own commitments, modeling follow-through, honest, willing to call you out on excuses and rationalizations, not just accepting them, supportive, encouraging without harsh judgment, and reciprocal, creating mutual accountability, not one-sided relationship. The strategic timing schedules accountability check-ins at frequencies matching your needs. Some people need daily accountability, while others do well with weekly, recognizing that more frequent creates more pressure and support, while less frequent allows more autonomy. Match frequency to your tendency, where chronic procrastinators benefit from more frequent check-ins. The authenticity practice reports honestly about struggles and failures, not just successes, creating genuine accountability. Authentic reporting includes admitting when you did not follow through rather than making excuses, sharing real obstacles and challenges, asking for help when stuck, and being vulnerable about difficulties. Honesty enables real support, while hiding struggles perpetuates problems. The implementation requires establishing structured accountability systems with regular check-ins, making specific public commitments to others, developing supportive relationships, providing encouragement, creating regular reporting rhythm, establishing meaningful consequences for delay, selecting partners carefully, timing check-ins strategically, practicing authentic reporting, and treating accountability as preventing escape where isolation enabled continued procrastination, making external Commitment Essential 7th Framework for Supplementing Internal Discipline Through Social Structures. Create accountability systems preventing escape. Establish external commitment support. Build accountability or enable avoidance. You understand now that external commitment binds more than internal, that systems create structure preventing escape, that support provides encouragement, that reporting creates deadlines, and that Chapter 7 provides accountability framework making external support possible where isolation enabled delay. Chapter 8. Use strategic deadlines and time constraints. Chapter 8 uses strategic deadlines and time constraints, creating urgency that forces action and overcomes procrastination tendencies. The deadline power shows that time pressure concentrates focus and effort, creating conditions where work gets done because unlimited time enables unlimited delay. That Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill available time, meaning tasks without deadlines drift indefinitely while constrained tasks get completed. That deadlines force decisions and action by eliminating option of waiting for perfect conditions or complete certainty. That intelligent people often work well under deadline pressure, having developed pattern of last-minute performance that proves deadlines can overcome procrastination, and understanding that systematically using strategic deadlines through setting constraining and leveraging urgency is essential 8th framework for breaking procrastination cycle. Because time constraints force choices and effort, that open-ended time does not require making deadline creation critical tool where unlimited time enabled endless delay. Use strategic deadlines and time constraints. Create urgency for action. Set deadlines or allow endless delay. The deadline setting establishes specific time limits for task completion, creating external structure forcing progress. Effective deadlines are specific, including exact date and time, not vague timeframe. Realistic, achievable given actual capacity and other commitments, not aspirational wish. Consequential, connected to meaningful stakes, whether external obligations or self-imposed costs. And visible, tracked publicly or through calendar reminders, not just mental note easily ignored. Set deadlines through scheduling task completion dates in calendar, treating them as appointments. Breaking large projects into milestone deadlines, creating series of smaller targets. Establishing interim check-in dates, preventing last-minute scramble. Connecting deadlines to external commitments like meetings, presentations, or deliverables. And making deadlines public through sharing with others, creating accountability. Self-imposed deadlines work better when connected to external stakes, like telling someone you will deliver by date, creating social commitment, or scheduling meeting to present completed work, making deadline real, not arbitrary. The constraint creation deliberately reduces available time for task completion, using artificial scarcity to force focus and effort. Constraints include time boxing, allocating fixed period for task like 1 hour requiring completion, or stopping rather than open-ended work session. Setting earlier deadline than actually needed, creating buffer while maintaining urgency. Limiting work hours or days available, forcing efficiency. Scheduling immediately subsequent commitment, creating hard stop. And removing option of extension, declaring this is only time available. Constraints work by eliminating procrastination option, making work versus not work choice rather than work now versus later, where later always feels available. Example might be telling yourself you have only Saturday morning to complete task with unavoidable commitment Saturday afternoon, removing ability to extend deadline indefinitely. Constraint focuses attention and effort through scarcity. The urgency leverage uses time pressure productively, channeling stress into productive action rather than panic. Productive urgency includes accepting that some pressure enhances performance through increased focus and energy, using deadline proximity to overcome perfectionism, and overthinking, recognizing that limited time requires good enough rather than perfect. Allowing urgency to simplify decisions by eliminating less important options, and channeling anxiety into action through movement rather than paralysis. Balance urgency by avoiding chronic last-minute work, which creates unsustainable stress, while using strategic pressure to overcome inertia. The Parkinson exploitation applies law deliberately by filling available time with meaningful work or reducing available time to match needed effort. Exploitation includes assigning tight but achievable deadlines, preventing work from expanding unnecessarily, scheduling tasks into specific time slots rather than allocating entire day, and working in focused sprints with clear endpoints rather than open-ended sessions. The progressive deadlines break large projects into series of smaller interim deadlines, preventing end-loaded panic. Progressive approach includes setting milestone dates throughout project, creating regular accountability points, establishing early deliverables like outline or draft, ensuring project starts not just ends on deadline, and building in review points, allowing course correction before final deadline. The buffer building sets internal deadlines earlier than external deadlines, creating margin for unexpected problems. Buffer might mean aiming to complete task 1 week before actual deadline, setting milestone dates with extra time built in, or planning to finish earlier, allowing refinement time. Buffer reduces last-minute stress while maintaining deadline benefits. The commitment stacking schedules activities immediately after deadlines, preventing extension through making deadline hard constraint. Stacking includes booking meeting to present completed work immediately after internal deadline, scheduling commitment that requires task completion like printing or delivering, or telling others work will be done by specific time, creating social consequence. The deadline review analyzes what deadlines work best for you, learning from experience. Review includes noting whether you work better with tight or moderate deadlines, identifying what consequences make deadlines feel real, recognizing which deadline structures you tend to ignore, and adjusting approach based on what actually produces results, not what should theoretically work. The implementation requires setting specific, realistic, consequential deadlines, creating artificial constraints, reducing available time, leveraging urgency productively, channeling pressure into action, exploiting Parkinson's law deliberately, using progressive deadlines for projects, building buffers for safety, stacking commitments, preventing extension, reviewing effectiveness, learning from experience, and treating strategic deadlines as forcing action where unlimited time enabled endless delay, making time constraint essential. 8th framework for overcoming procrastination through structured urgency. Use strategic deadlines and time constraints. Create urgency for action. Set deadlines or allow endless delay. You understand now that time pressure forces decisions and effort, that Parkinson's law shows work expands to fill time, that constraints create focus, that urgency can enhance performance, and that Chapter 8 provides deadline framework, making urgency tool possible where unlimited time enabled procrastination. Chapter 9. Develop self-compassion, replacing shame cycles. Chapter 9 develops self-compassion, replacing shame cycles that intensify procrastination through harsh self-judgment and criticism. The compassion power shows that shame about procrastination creates vicious cycle where feeling bad about delay triggers more avoidance, because shame is painful emotion people naturally escape through procrastination or other numbing behaviors. That harsh self-criticism following procrastination undermines motivation and self-efficacy, making future action feel impossible, while compassion enables constructive change. That intelligent people are particularly vulnerable to shame because high standards and self-awareness create acute awareness of gap between capability and performance, intensifying self-judgment. That self-compassion is not self-indulgence or excuse-making, but treating yourself with kindness you would offer struggling friend, enabling honest acknowledgement and sustained effort toward change. And understanding that systematically developing self-compassion through shame recognition, compassionate practice, and cycle breaking is essential. 9th framework for breaking procrastination, because compassion creates psychological safety, enabling change while shame perpetuates avoidance, making kindness towards self-critical, where harsh judgment intensified procrastination through creating additional pain, requiring escape. Develop self-compassion, replacing shame cycles. Treat yourself with kindness. Practice compassion or perpetuate shame. The shame recognition identifies harsh self-judgment and toxic shame patterns that follow procrastination, intensifying problem. Shame about procrastination includes harsh internal criticism, like "you're so lazy, stupid, or worthless" following delay. Catastrophic thinking that procrastination proves you are fundamentally flawed or will never succeed. Comparing yourself unfavorably to others who seem more disciplined, creating inadequacy feelings. Global judgments of character rather than specific behavior assessments, condemning yourself as person rather than acknowledging specific action, and rumination, dwelling on failures and inadequacies rather than moving forward constructively. Recognize shame through noticing harsh critical internal voice following procrastination, feeling worthless, inadequate, or fundamentally flawed rather than just disappointed, experiencing paralysis or hopelessness after procrastinating rather than renewed motivation, and comparing your worst to others' best, creating impossible standards. Shame differs from guilt, where guilt says "I did bad thing," motivating repair, while shame says "I am bad person," creating paralysis and avoidance. Shame about procrastination creates more procrastination through triggering escape from painful self-judgment. The compassionate practice treats yourself with kindness, understanding, and acceptance, particularly during difficulty and failure. Self-compassion psychologist Kristin Neff identifies three elements, including self-kindness, treating yourself with warmth and understanding rather than harsh judgment; common humanity, recognizing that struggle, imperfection, and procrastination are universal human experiences, not personal defects; and mindfulness, acknowledging difficulty without exaggerating or denying it, maintaining balanced perspective. Practice compassion through speaking to yourself as you would speak to a good friend who procrastinated, offering understanding and encouragement rather than harsh criticism. Acknowledging that everyone procrastinates and struggles with self-regulation, normalizing rather than pathologizing your experience. Recognizing procrastination as behavioral pattern to change, not character flaw defining you. Forgiving yourself for delays and moving forward rather than dwelling in shame and rumination. And treating setbacks as temporary difficulties, not permanent failures. Compassionate response to procrastination might be, "This is hard, and I am struggling, but that is human and understandable," rather than "I am pathetic loser who cannot do anything right." The cycle breaking interrupts shame procrastination shame pattern that perpetuates problem. Cycle begins with procrastination, triggering shame, which creates painful emotion, requiring escape, leading to more procrastination as avoidance mechanism, which generates more shame, completing vicious spiral. Break cycle through recognizing when shame is arising after procrastination, catching pattern before it intensifies, deliberately choosing compassionate response instead of harsh judgment, interrupting automatic shame reaction. Using shame as signal to practice self-compassion rather than evidence of worthlessness, reframing meaning, and returning focus to constructive action rather than ruminating on failure, moving forward instead of staying stuck. Each time you respond with compassion instead of shame, you weaken cycle, making future breaks easier. The constructive accountability distinguishes between compassionate acknowledgement and harsh criticism. Constructive approach honestly acknowledges procrastination and its consequences without adding toxic shame layer. Identifies specific factors that contributed to delay, enabling problem solving, develops concrete plan for moving forward, focusing on action, and maintains belief in capacity to change, providing hope. Accountability without shame enables growth, while shame-based criticism creates paralysis. The imperfection acceptance recognizes that occasional procrastination is normal human experience, not moral failing. Acceptance includes expecting occasional lapses rather than demanding perfection, viewing procrastination as behavior to modify, not identity to change, and maintaining perspective that few instances of delay do not negate overall progress. The self-forgiveness releases past procrastination, allowing forward movement. Forgiveness includes acknowledging harm or consequences procrastination caused yourself or others, taking responsibility without excessive self-blame, making amends or repairs where possible, learning from experience, identifying lessons, and consciously releasing guilt and shame, choosing to move forward. Forgiveness does not excuse procrastination, but prevents past delays from sabotaging future action. The encouragement focus emphasizes supportive self-talk, motivating future action. Encouragement includes reminding yourself of past successes and capabilities, acknowledging effort and progress however small, maintaining optimistic outlook about capacity to change, and cheering yourself forward like supportive coach rather than harsh critic. The implementation requires recognizing shame patterns following procrastination, practicing self-compassion with kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness, breaking shame procrastination cycles through compassionate interruption, maintaining constructive accountability without toxic shame, accepting imperfection as human, practicing self-forgiveness, releasing past, using encouraging self-talk, and treating self-compassion as enabling change where harsh judgment perpetuated avoidance making. Kindness essential. Ninth framework for breaking procrastination through replacing shame with support. Develop self-compassion, replacing shame cycles. Treat yourself with kindness. Practice compassion or perpetuate shame. You understand now that shame intensifies procrastination through creating pain, requiring escape. That self-compassion enables change through psychological safety. That breaking cycles interrupts shame avoidance pattern. That constructive accountability avoids toxic criticism. And that Chapter 9 provides compassion framework, making self-support possible where shame perpetuated cycles. Chapter 10. Integrate all elements into consistent action system, eliminating delay. Chapter 10 integrates all 9 frameworks into consistent action system that eliminates chronic procrastination through comprehensive approach addressing all dimensions. The integration principle shows that individual frameworks practiced in isolation create partial improvements, while comprehensive integration creates complete procrastination cycle breaking. That addressing only behavioral techniques without psychological roots produces temporary changes that collapse under stress. That each framework enhances effectiveness of others through complementary mechanisms, creating synergistic multiplication, not mere addition of benefits. That most people try single approach like time management or willpower missing underlying fears, perfectionism, or emotional patterns, ensuring return to procrastination. And understanding that integrating all 9 frameworks into cohesive system is essential 10th and final framework for breaking procrastination permanently, because only complete integration addresses intelligence-specific factors, perfectionism, fears, emotional triggers, overthinking, starting barriers, accountability, timing, and self-judgment simultaneously, creating robust transformation where partial practice remained vulnerable to regression, making comprehensive integration critical culmination. Integrate all elements into consistent action system, eliminating delay. Combine frameworks completely. Build action system or remain stuck. The action architecture maps how all 9 frameworks combine, creating coherent, integrated anti-procrastination system. Understanding intelligence-procrastination paradox from Framework 1 provides self-awareness and compassion, recognizing how intelligence contributes to delay. Addressing perfectionism from Framework 2 removes impossible standards, blocking starting. Resolving fear from Framework 3 eliminates emotional barriers, preventing action. Developing emotional regulation from Framework 4 manages discomfort triggers. Overcoming analysis paralysis from Framework 5 forces action over endless planning. Building starting rituals from Framework 6 bypasses initial resistance. Creating accountability from Framework 7 prevents escape through external commitment. Using strategic deadlines from Framework 8 forces urgency and focus. Developing self-compassion from Framework 9 replaces shame, enabling sustained effort. Each framework supports, enables, and enhances others, creating integrated system far more powerful than individual techniques, producing genuine, consistent action, replacing chronic delay. The synergistic multiplication recognizes how frameworks amplify effectiveness, creating exponential improvement. Understanding paradox reduces shame, enabling honest work on other frameworks. Addressing perfectionism makes action less threatening, reducing fear. Fear resolution enables tolerating discomfort without avoidance. Emotional regulation prevents analysis paralysis by managing uncertainty, anxiety. Overcoming overthinking makes starting rituals effective. Starting rituals reduce activation energy, making deadlines achievable. Deadlines create external structure supporting accountability. Accountability provides support during shame moments, enabling self-compassion. Self-compassion enables honest acknowledgement of perfectionism, fears, and emotions, allowing deeper work. Consciously leverage synergies, applying multiple frameworks together, recognizing combinations create effects individual elements cannot achieve alone. The phased implementation recognizes complete transformation requires sustained practice, making strategic progression essential. Awareness phase months 1 through 2 focuses frameworks 1 and 2, understanding paradox and recognizing perfectionism. Foundation phase months 3 through 4 adds frameworks 3 and 4, addressing fears and developing emotional regulation. Action phase months 5 through 6 integrates frameworks 5 and 6, overcoming paralysis and building starting rituals. Structure phase months 7 through 9 adds frameworks 7 and 8, creating accountability and using deadlines. Integration phase months 10 through 12 completes with Framework 9 self-compassion and combines all elements. Complete procrastination cycle breaking typically requires 1 year sustained deliberate practice, creating genuinely consistent action system. The personalized adaptation recognizes optimal approach varies individually, requiring customization based on your specific procrastination patterns. Different people emphasize different frameworks, adapting to personal needs while maintaining all areas. Identify which frameworks address your primary procrastination drivers, focusing effort there while maintaining baseline practice across all frameworks. The progress tracking monitors improvement, celebrating gains, maintaining motivation. Track through noting tasks started and completed versus procrastinated. Measuring time from task assignment to beginning, showing decreased delay. Recording emotional states and patterns, revealing triggers. And celebrating instances of choosing action over avoidance, reinforcing new patterns. The relapse management prepares for setbacks, viewing them as temporary, not permanent. Management includes expecting occasional procrastination rather than demanding perfection, using relapses as learning opportunities, identifying what triggered return to old pattern, applying self-compassion rather than shame when delays occur, and quickly returning to system without extended discouragement. The lifelong practice recognizes procrastination tendency may never fully disappear, requiring ongoing vigilance and framework application. Practice includes maintaining starting rituals, accountability, and self-compassion indefinitely, quickly addressing any drift toward old patterns, and accepting management, not elimination, as realistic goal. The implementation requires designing comprehensive action architecture, integrating all 9 frameworks synergistically, recognizing and leveraging multiplying synergies between elements, implementing progressively through phased year-long approach, adapting personalization based on individual patterns, tracking progress, celebrating improvement, managing relapses compassionately, committing to lifelong practice, and treating integration as complete transformation from chronic procrastination to consistent action where partial practice remained vulnerable, making comprehensive integration essential. 10th framework for permanently breaking smart person procrastination cycle through addressing all dimensions simultaneously. You have learned 10 frameworks for breaking procrastination cycle and translating intelligence into achievement. Framework 1, understanding intelligence procrastination paradox. Framework 2, recognizing perfectionism. Framework 3, addressing fear of failure and success. Framework 4, developing emotional regulation. Framework 5, overcoming analysis paralysis. Framework 6, building starting rituals. Framework 7, creating accountability. Framework 8, using strategic deadlines. Framework 9, developing self-compassion. Framework 10, integrating into action system. What matters now is applying one framework today. 5 immediate priorities. Recognize one way your intelligence contributes to procrastination, creating self-awareness. Identify one perfectionist standard preventing starting and consciously choose good enough. Acknowledge one fear-blocking action and take small step despite it. Notice one uncomfortable feeling triggering avoidance and stay with feeling while acting. Stop one instance of analysis paralysis and take immediate imperfect action. Start immediately. Implement consistently. Break the cycle. Stop procrastinating despite intelligence, and start translating capability into achievement through systematic cycle breaking, addressing all dimensions. Stop delaying important work and start doing what matters consistently, producing results matching your potential. Apply frameworks systematically, integrate comprehensively, and break procrastination cycle through unwavering commitment starting right now today.